What this 7-year-old whispered to a retiring police dog made a criminal confess everything. Rocky's intelligent brown eyes had seen it all in 12 years of police work. Drug busts worth millions, kidnapping rescues across 3 counties, and countless families reunited with missing loved ones. But as he lay on his ceremonial blanket in the courthouse hallway during recess, the aging German shepherd had no idea that a 7-year-old girl was about to change his life one final time. Maya Chen approached him with the careful reverence of someone meeting their greatest hero. Rocky's tail wagged gently. He remembered her from that terrifying night in Willow Creek Forest, when he'd searched 14 hours straight to find her lost brother Tommy. What Maya whispered in his ear next would set off a chain reaction that stunned everyone in the courtroom. At the defense table, career criminal Marcus Webb had been planning to fight the charges, relying on legal technicalities and reasonable doubt. But when Maya stood up to address the court about her promise to Rocky, something inside Webb began to crack. The little girl's pure faith in redemption and second chances would prove more powerful than any legal argument. The first golden threads of sunlight pierced through the narrow windows of the Metropolitan Police Station's K-9 unit, painting delicate patterns across the concrete floor, where 12 kennels stood in perfect rows. In the third kennel from the left, the one with a brass nameplate that read Rocky Hero in bold letters, a magnificent German shepherd stirred from his sleep. Rocky's eyes opened slowly, those deep brown pools of intelligence that had gazed upon countless crime scenes, searched through endless forests, and looked into the faces of both victims and criminals with equal measure of compassion and determination. But this morning, something was different. The weight of time had settled into his bones like morning frost, and as he attempted to rise from his favorite sleeping position, curled up with his nose tucked under his tail, his powerful hind legs betrayed him with a subtle tremor. The motion was slight, almost imperceptible to anyone but the woman who had spent the last 12 years studying every nuance of his behavior. Officer Sarah Martinez had arrived early, as she always did on important days, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a heart heavy with the knowledge that this would be their final morning together as active partners. "Easy there, old friend," Sarah whispered, setting down her coffee cups and quickly moving to Rocky's kennel. Her voice carried the gentle authority that had guided Rocky through thousands of training exercises, hundreds of crime scenes, and dozens of life-or-death situations. But today, that voice wavered with an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel while in uniform. As Rocky struggled to find his footing, Sarah's trained eye caught every detail that spoke of his advancing age. The once jet-black coat around his muzzle had faded to distinguished silver, creating a mask of wisdom that seemed to reflect all the secrets he'd uncovered and all the people he'd saved. His ears, still perfectly pointed and alert, twitched at sounds that his diminishing hearing could barely catch. Most heartbreaking of all, his legs, those powerful limbs that had carried him through swamps, over mountains, and across city rooftops in pursuit of justice, now required careful coordination just to support his noble frame. "Today's the big day, old friend, your last case," Sarah murmured, her fingers finding their familiar place behind Rocky's ears, that special spot that had always calmed him before difficult missions. Her touch was gentle but purposeful, conveying 12 years of partnership, trust, and unconditional love. Rocky's response was immediate and profound. Despite his physical limitations, his intelligent brown eyes focused on Sarah's face with laser-like intensity. In that gaze, she saw not the tired old dog that his body suggested, but the same fierce dedication and unwavering loyalty that had made him legendary throughout the department. He seemed to understand, with that supernatural intuition that had made him such an exceptional police dog, that this morning carried special weight. Around them, the station began its daily transformation, from the quiet sanctuary of night shift into the bustling command center of day operations. Phones started ringing in distant offices, radio chatter filled the hallways, and the steady rhythm of police work resumed its familiar cadence. But here, in this corner of the K9 unit, time seemed suspended. The harsh fluorescent lights couldn't diminish the sacred quality of this moment, between partners who had shared everything: danger and triumph, exhaustion and exhilaration, and now the bittersweet pain of goodbye. Sarah reached into her equipment locker and withdrew Rocky's ceremonial collar, a piece of leather and brass that told the story of an extraordinary career. Unlike his everyday working collar, this one was reserved for special occasions: commendation ceremonies, court appearances, and formal events where Rocky represented not just himself, but the entire K9 program. The brass nameplate caught the morning light, reflecting the numerous commendations etched into its surface: Outstanding Service Medal, Life-Saving Award, Heroism Citation, and a dozen others that chronicled his journey from eager puppy to legendary police dog. As Sarah fastened the collar around Rocky's neck, her fingers traced each engraved award: the Outstanding Service Medal from his second year, when he'd located a missing child in a blizzard that had forced human searchers to abandon their efforts. The life from year 8, when he tracked an armed kidnapper through 3 counties, leading to a dramatic rescue that saved 2 lives. Each commendation represented not just Rocky's exceptional abilities, but the countless hours of training, the unwavering partnership between human and canine, and the deep bond that had made them one of the most successful canine teams in the department's history. As the ceremonial collar settled into place, Rocky seemed to understand its significance. His posture straightened despite his aching joints, and his tail gave a dignified wag that spoke of pride, purpose, and readiness to serve one final time. The morning light continued to strengthen, casting longer shadows across the kennel area and highlighting the profound connection between officer and partner. In the distance, the sounds of the waking city drifted through the windows: car engines starting, people beginning their daily routines, children calling to each other as they walked to school. It was the sound of a community going about its business in safety and security, protected by officers like Sarah and partners like Rocky, who stood watch while they slept. But for Sarah, all of those sounds faded into background noise as she focused on this moment, possibly the last quiet morning she would share with the dog, who had been more than a partner, more than a colleague, and certainly more than a pet. Rocky had been her constant companion through the best and worst moments of her career, the steady presence that had given her courage when she felt afraid, wisdom when she felt confused, and comfort when the weight of the job threatened to overwhelm her. The men's and women's locker rooms at the Metropolitan Police Station had seen their share of emotional moments over the years, but rarely had they witnessed anything like the impromptu gathering that formed around Rocky as Sarah prepared for what everyone knew would be his final court appearance. Word had spread through the station, with the speed that only news of deep significance could achieve. Officers, finishing their night shifts, lingered instead of heading home. Day shift personnel arrived early, coffee cups in hand and stories ready to share. Even the gruff veterans who claimed they didn't get sentimental found themselves drawn to the K9 unit, where Rocky sat with regal dignity, somehow understanding that this gathering was in his honor. Officer Johnson was the first to speak, his usually boisterous voice unusually soft as he knelt beside Rocky. "You remember that warehouse bust down on 5th Street, don't you, boy?" He looked up at Sarah and the growing circle of colleagues. 3 months we'd been trying to crack that drug operation, had suspects. This magnificent beast goes straight to what looked like a regular wall. Starts pawing and whining like he's found buried treasure. Johnson chuckled at the memory, his eyes brightening. Turns out that regular wall was hiding $2 million worth of cocaine. $2 million! Rocky's nose had detected trace amounts that our best equipment couldn't find. Detective Brown, a 20-year veteran who had worked dozens of cases with the K9 unit, stepped forward with his own memory to share. "Tell them about the Hendricks kidnapping case," he said, his voice thick with emotion that surprised everyone present. Brown wasn't known for sentiment, but Rocky had a way of bringing out the humanity in even the most hardened officers. Sarah nodded, remembering that terrible week when 8-year-old Amanda Hendricks had been snatched from her school playground. "Rocky tracked that kidnapper across 3 counties, she said, her voice growing stronger as she recounted the story. "The scent trail was 2 days old when we started, and it had rained twice. Everyone said it was hopeless, that no dog could follow such a degraded trail across that distance. But Rocky never gave up," Brown interjected. "Mile after mile, through highways and back roads, suburban neighborhoods and rural farmland. I was in the lead car following you two, and I kept thinking we were chasing ghosts. The trail seemed impossible to follow." Rocky's ears perked up at the familiar story, and his tail gave a proud wag, as if he remembered every detail of that grueling pursuit. Sarah continued, 18 hours we tracked. Rocky's paws were bleeding, he was exhausted, dehydrated, but he refused to quit. Every time I thought we should turn back, he'd find the scent again and press forward. The memory brought tears to Sarah's eyes as she remembered the moment when Rocky had finally led them to an abandoned farmhouse 37 miles from the abduction site. When we found Amanda, she was tied up in a cellar that our helicopters and ground teams had searched right past twice. But Rocky knew. He sat down right over that cellar door and refused to move. Officer Martinez from the traffic division, no relation to Sarah despite sharing the same surname, shared his own Rocky story. "My first week on the force, I got called to assist on a missing person case. Elderly man with Alzheimer's had wandered away from his care facility during a snowstorm. I was sure we were looking for a body. Temperatures were below freezing, and he'd been missing for 6 hours. Martinez's voice grew warm with admiration. Rocky found him in a drainage culvert, hypothermic but alive, covered in snow and barely conscious. But here's the thing I'll never forget. When we reached the man, Rocky didn't just alert and move away like they trained them to do. He climbed down into that culvert and lay down next to the man, sharing his body heat until the paramedics could get him out. That man lived because Leave him alone." Each story revealed another facet of Rocky's extraordinary character, painting a picture of a dog whose abilities transcended mere training or instinct. As the memories flowed, it became clear that Rocky's gift wasn't just his incredible nose or his physical prowess. It was his unwavering dedication to protecting and serving, his intuitive understanding of human need, and his refusal to give up when lives hung in the balance. Sergeant Williams, the K9 unit supervisor, stepped forward with perhaps the most telling observation of all. "In 30 years of working with police dogs," he said, his gruff voice carrying unexpected gentleness, "I've seen exceptional tracking, outstanding drug detection, incredible bite work. But I've never seen anything like Rocky's ability to understand the human cost of every case. It's like he knows that behind every scent trail, every piece of evidence, every search, is a family waiting to be whole again. Rocky seemed to sense the weight of all these testimonials. He sat with perfect posture, despite his aching joints, his intelligent eyes moving from face to face, as if acknowledging each person's contribution to the tapestry of his career. His tail wagged slowly, rhythmically, in a gesture that seemed to say, "Thank you," more eloquently than words ever could. As the stories continued to flow, Sarah felt the full impact of Rocky's legacy settling around her like a warm blanket. This wasn't just about one dog's retirement. It was about the culmination of a career that had touched dozens of lives, solved hundreds of cases, and inspired everyone who had worked alongside him. The weight of this being his final case suddenly felt less like an ending and more like the completion of something sacred and meaningful. The police cruiser rolled through the early morning streets of downtown Metro City, carrying its passengers toward a destination that would mark the end of an era. In the driver's seat, Officer Sarah Martinez navigated the familiar route to the courthouse, while stealing glances in the rearview mirror at her partner of 12 years. Rocky occupied his usual position in the back seat, the specially designed K9 transport area that had been his mobile office for over a decade. But today, something was different about his demeanor. Gone was the alert intensity he typically displayed when heading to a crime scene or court appearance. Instead, he sat with quiet dignity, his graying muzzle turned toward the window as he watched the city wake up around them. The route to the courthouse took them through the heart of the neighborhoods Rocky had served so faithfully. They passed Riverside Elementary, where 3 years ago Rocky had tracked down a predator who had been lurking near the playground again. "You know, Rocky," Sarah began, her voice soft in the quiet interior of the cruiser, "some officers never get the perfect ending to their career. They retire with cases unsolved, with regrets about chances they didn't take or risks they didn't manage." She paused, catching Rocky's eyes in the mirror. "But you're going out on top, partner." Rocky's ears twitched at the sound of her voice, and he shifted his position slightly to get a better view of Sarah's face in the mirror. Even in his advanced age, his eyes held that same intelligent alertness that had made him such an exceptional police dog. He seemed to be listening not just to her words, but to the emotion behind them. Sarah continued, finding comfort in the familiar ritual of talking through cases with Rocky. It was something they'd done thousands of times before, Sarah explaining the situation while Rocky listened with that uncanny understanding that had always made her feel like he grasped not just the facts of a case, but its emotional significance as well. "Today's case is Marcus Webb," Sarah explained, her voice taking on the professional tone she used for briefings. "Remember that string of burglaries that had the Maple Street neighborhood terrorized for 3 months? Families afraid to leave their homes, elderly residents installing extra locks and security systems they couldn't afford?" Rocky's posture shifted almost imperceptibly, and Sarah could tell he was processing the information. Dogs didn't understand legal proceedings the way humans did. But Rocky had always seemed to grasp the concept of justice, the idea that their work was about protecting the innocent and ensuring that those who caused harm were held accountable. "Webb's a repeat offender," Sarah continued. "Been in and out of the system since he was 17. But this time was different. This time he wasn't just stealing things, he was stealing people's sense of security, their ability to feel safe in their own homes." Her voice hardened slightly as she remembered the crime scene reports, the statements from traumatized families who had come home to find their sanctuaries violated. The cruiser stopped at a red light, and Sarah took the opportunity to turn and look directly at Rocky. "You remember that night 2 weeks ago, when we got the call about a break-in in progress on Maple Street?" Mrs. Chen was hysterical, said she could hear someone moving around downstairs while she and her children were trapped upstairs. Rocky's ears perked up at the memory, and Sarah could see the recognition in his eyes. That had been one of his finest moments, tracking Webb's escape route through 3 backyards, over 2 fences, and finally to the abandoned garage where he'd been hiding stolen goods from a dozen different burglaries. "They're building the new community center. But you stayed with it, didn't you, boy? Even when Detective Morrison thought we should call in additional units and set up a perimeter search, you knew exactly where Webb was headed." The light turned green, and they continued toward the courthouse. The morning sun was climbing higher now, casting longer shadows across the urban landscape. Sarah could see the courthouse spire in the distance, its classical architecture standing as a monument to justice and the rule of law that she and Rocky had served for so many years. "What made that collar so special," Sarah continued, "wasn't just that we caught Webb with stolen property from 7 different burglaries. It was that we caught him before he could commit the big one, the one he'd been building up to all along." Her voice grew serious as she remembered the intelligence they'd gathered after Webb's arrest. He'd been casing the Morrison family's house for weeks, planning to hit them when they went on vacation next month. 4 kids in that family, Rocky. The youngest is only 3 years old. Rocky made a soft sound, not quite a whine, but a noise that Sarah had learned to interpret as understanding, even satisfaction. It was the sound he made when a case concluded successfully, when justice was served and families could sleep safely again. As they pulled into the courthouse parking lot, Sarah felt the weight of finality settling over the moment. The morning sun reflected off the granite steps of the courthouse, creating what looked like a golden pathway leading up to the imposing double doors. For a moment, the symbolism was almost overwhelming. Rocky's golden years of service leading to this final testimony, this last chance to see justice done. "After today's testimony, you'll hang up your badge forever," Sarah said quietly, her hands still gripping the steering wheel even though the car was now parked. "No more crime scenes, no more tracking through the rain, no more late-night calls that pull us away from dinner." She paused, her voice catching slightly. "No more partnership." Rocky seemed to sense the emotion in her voice, and he leaned forward as far as his safety harness would allow, trying to get closer to his human partner. In that gesture, Sarah saw everything that had made their partnership extraordinary. Rocky's intuitive understanding of human emotion, his desire to comfort and protect, his unwavering loyalty that transcended the boundaries between species. "But you know what, partner?" Sarah said, turning to look directly into Rocky's intelligent brown eyes. "Some careers end with whimpers, with cases left unsolved and criminals still on the loose. Yours is ending with a testimony that's going to put away a man who terrorized an entire neighborhood. That's not an ending. That's a victory." As they prepared to exit the vehicle and walk up those courthouse steps together for the final time, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Rocky had given her 12 years of unwavering partnership, countless moments of triumph, and the deep satisfaction that came from knowing they had made their communities safer. Today's testimony would be their final official act together. But the legacy they had built, the lives they had saved, the criminals they had caught, the families they had reunited, would endure long after Rocky's retirement. The golden pathway of morning sunlight seemed to stretch before them like a bridge between their glorious past and an uncertain but hopeful future, where Rocky's service would be remembered and honored, even as a new generation of officers and canine partners took up the mantle of protecting and serving their community. In the warm, sunlit kitchen of the Chen family's modest two-story home on Maple Street, 7-year-old Maya Chen sat at the polished oak dining table with the focused intensity of someone engaged in the most important task in the world. Before her lay a small plastic police badge, the kind found in toy stores for children playing dress-up. But in Maya's small hands, it had been transformed into something far more precious than any child's plaything. The badge itself was unremarkable, cheap plastic with a silver finish that had begun to wear away around the edges from countless hours of handling. The words "Junior Police" were embossed across the top in block letters, while a generic shield design occupied the center. But Maya treated this simple toy with the reverence most people reserved for family heirlooms or religious artifacts. Her morning ritual was always the same. She would wake before the rest of the family, pad quietly down to the kitchen in her flannel pajamas and bunny slippers, and retrieve her special cloth from the drawer where her mother kept the dish towels. The cloth, a soft piece of microfiber that Dr. Chen had originally used for cleaning her stethoscope, had become Maya's dedicated badge polishing equipment. With movements that were both deliberate and gentle, Maya worked the cloth across every millimeter of the badge's surface. She understood, with the kind of intuitive wisdom that sometimes appears in children, that this wasn't really about making plastic shinier. This was about respect, about preparation, about honoring something that represented everything she hoped to become. "Tell me again about Rocky," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible in the quiet kitchen. Her request was directed at her 10-year-old brother Tommy, who sat beside her at the table, ostensibly reading a chapter book for his 5th-grade English class, but really just going through the motions while his mind wandered to other things. Tommy's face underwent an immediate transformation at his sister's request. The casual expression of a boy trying to finish homework before school was replaced by something much more serious, the look of someone who had experienced something profound and him beyond his 10 years. "It was dark," Tommy began, his voice taking on the cadence of someone who had told this story many times before, each repetition helping him process the trauma and fear that still visited him in nightmares. "Really, really dark. Not like when Mom turns off the lights at bedtime dark, but forest dark. The kind of dark where you can't see your own hand, even when you hold it right in front of your face." Maya's polishing motions slowed but never stopped as she absorbed every word. This story, Tommy's story, but also Rocky's story, had become the foundation of her understanding of what it meant to be truly heroic. She had heard it dozens of times, but each telling revealed new details, new layers of meaning that her growing mind could now comprehend. "I was supposed to stay close to the campsite," Tommy continued, his voice carrying the weight of guilt that he still felt over his mistake. "Dad was setting up the big tent, and Mom was unpacking the food. You were taking a nap in the car because you got cranky after the long drive. I just wanted to explore a little bit, you know? I thought I was being careful." Tommy's book lay forgotten in his lap as he relived that terrifying afternoon 13 months ago. "I followed what I thought was a trail, but it must have been just where animals walked or something, because after a while there was no trail at all. Just trees and bushes and rocks everywhere. And when I tried to go back," his voice trailed off, and Maya could see his hands trembling slightly as he remembered the panic of that moment. "When I tried to go back, everything looked the same," Tommy resumed, his voice steadier now. Every tree looked like every other tree. Every rock looked like every other rock. I called for Mom and Dad, but the forest just swallowed up my voice. It was like shouting into a pillow. Maya's small fingers traced the outline of her toy badge as she imagined her brother's terror. In her mind's eye, she could see Tommy, smaller then, only 9 years old, and not yet showing the height spurt that would come later, stumbling through the undergrowth, calling for help, until his voice grew hoarse, growing more frightened with each passing moment. "I found this fallen log," Tommy said, unconsciously rubbing his arms as if trying to ward off the memory of that long, cold night. It was kind of hollow underneath, like a little cave. I crawled under there because I was so cold, and I was scared of all the sounds the forest makes at night. Owls hooting, branches creaking, things moving around in the bushes. Would hear Mom and Dad calling for me. But I was so tired and scared, and eventually I fell asleep, curled up under that log like some kind of animal. Dr. Lisa Chen, who had been quietly preparing breakfast at the kitchen counter, paused in her work of scrambling eggs and buttering toast. Even though she had heard this story many times, even though she had lived through the nightmare of searching for her missing son, Tommy's words still had the power to transport her back to those terrible hours of not knowing whether her child was safe. Maya's polishing had stopped entirely now, as she focused all of her attention on her brother's words. "And then Rocky found you," she prompted, though they both knew this part of the story by heart. "And then Rocky found me," Tommy confirmed, his voice brightening with the first hint of relief and gratitude. "I woke up because I heard this snuffling sound, like someone breathing really close to me. At first I was scared it might be a bear or something, but then I saw these brown eyes looking at me through the opening of my log cave." Tommy's face transformed as he remembered that moment of salvation. Rocky's eyes weren't scary at all, even though he was this big police dog. They were kind eyes, gentle eyes, smart eyes. It was like he was trying to tell me, "It's okay now. You're safe. We're going to get you home." Maya absorbed every detail of this part of the story, building in her imagination a picture of Rocky as not just a police dog, but as a guardian angel with fur and 4 legs. In her mind, Rocky's eyes held all the compassion and wisdom that she associated with true heroes. People who risked their own safety to protect others, who never gave up even when the task seemed impossible. "He didn't bark or anything," Tommy continued. "He just crawled partway into my hiding place and lay down next to me, sharing his warm fur until Officer Martinez and the other searchers could reach us. I remember putting my arms around him and feeling his heartbeat, steady and strong. And for the first time in hours, I wasn't scared anymore." The morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows seemed to grow brighter as Tommy concluded his account, as if the universe itself was celebrating the happy ending to what could have been an unimaginable tragedy. Maya resumed her gentle polishing of the badge, but now her movements carried a different quality, not just reverence, but purpose, as if she were preparing herself for the sacred duty that she sensed awaiting her in the future. Dr. Lisa Chen approached her children carrying 3 steaming cups of hot chocolate, each topped with a generous swirl of whipped cream and a sprinkle of cinnamon. This ritual, hot chocolate for important days, courtroom. As she set the cups down on the table, Dr. Chen's practiced eye took in the scene before her. Tommy, still processing the emotions that came with retelling his rescue story, sat with his shoulders slightly hunched, unconsciously making himself smaller as he remembered being lost and afraid. Maya, meanwhile, had set aside her polishing cloth, but kept her toy badge within easy reach, her small face serious with concentration as she absorbed every detail of her brother's account. "Here we go," Dr. Chen said softly, settling into the chair between her two children. "Hot chocolate for a very important day." Maya reached for her cup with both hands, wrapping her small fingers around the warm ceramic, as if drawing strength from its heat. The familiar ritual of the hot chocolate helped ground her in the present moment, even as her imagination remained filled with images of dark forests and heroic rescues. Dr. Chen studied her daughter's face, seeing in Maya's expression the same intensity that had characterized the little girl's personality since she could walk. Maya had always been their serious child, the one who asked questions that adults found startling in their depth and insight. But since Tommy's rescue, that seriousness had taken on a new quality, a sense of purpose that seemed almost too weighty for such small shoulders to bear. "Maya, sweetheart," Dr. Chen began, her voice carrying the gentle authority that came from years of practice as both a physician and a mother. "I want you to understand something important about that night when Tommy was lost." Maya set down her cup and turned to give her mother her complete attention, the same focused intensity she had shown while polishing her badge. Dr. Chen felt a familiar flutter of amazement at her daughter's ability to listen, really listen, in a way that many adults never mastered. "Rocky searched for 14 hours straight," Dr. Chen continued, her own eyes growing misty as the memories of that terrible night came flooding back. 14 hours without stopping, without resting, without giving up. The human search teams were exhausted. Some of them wanted to wait until morning when they could see better and bring in more equipment. Dr. Chen paused, remembering her own desperate state during those long hours, pacing back and forth at the command post they had set up at the forest's edge, checking her phone obsessively for updates, fighting off the terrible thoughts that crept into her mind about what might happen if they didn't find Tommy before hypothermia set in. "But Officer Martinez said something I'll never forget," Dr. Chen continued. "She looked at Rocky and Rocky looked back at her and she said, 'Rocky won't give up, so we won't give up either.' And they didn't, Maya. They searched through the night, through rain that started falling around midnight, through terrain so rough that some of the human searchers couldn't navigate it safely." Maya absorbed every word, young mind, building an increasingly detailed picture of the dedication and heroism that had saved her brother's life. In her imagination, Officer Martinez and Rocky became larger-than-life figures, crusaders for justice, who refused to be defeated by darkness, weather, or exhaustion. Tommy, who had been quietly sipping his hot chocolate, suddenly spoke up, adding details to his mother's account that he had never shared before. "When Rocky found me, it wasn't just that he was gentle," he said, his voice thoughtful as he accessed memories that were still painful, but no longer quite so frightening. "It was like he understood exactly how scared I was." Dr. Chen turned to look at her son, encouraging him to continue. These moments when Tommy felt ready to share more details of his experience were precious, signs that he was processing and healing from the trauma in healthy ways. "He didn't just lie down next to me," Tommy continued. "He positioned himself so that his body was between me and the opening of the log, like he was protecting me from anything that might come along. And he made these little sounds, not barking, but like soft whining sounds, almost like he was trying to comfort me." Maya leaned forward, captivated by this new detail. "Like he was talking to you?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Exactly like that. Like he was saying, 'I know you're scared, and I know you've been alone for a long time, but you're not alone anymore. I'm here now, and I'm going to stay with you until help comes.'" Dr. Chen felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to her son describe those crucial moments when Rocky had provided not just rescue, but emotional support and comfort. As a physician, she understood the importance of that psychological component, how Rocky's calming presence had likely prevented Tommy from going into shock or making dangerous decisions born of panic. And when Officer Martinez and the other searchers finally reached us, Tommy added, Rocky didn't just jump up and run to them like mission accomplished. He stayed with me while they checked me over, and he let me keep holding on to him while they wrapped me in blankets and gave me water. The kitchen fell silent for a moment as all three family members contemplated the profound gift they had been given. Not just Tommy's safe return, though that was miracle enough, but the knowledge that there were people in the world, like Officer Martinez and Rocky, who were willing to sacrifice their own comfort and safety to protect others. Maya broke the silence with a question that revealed the depth of her thinking. Mom, why do you think Rocky cared so much? I mean, he didn't even know Tommy before that night. Dr. Chen considered her daughter's question carefully, recognizing it as the kind of inquiry that deserved a thoughtful response. I think, sweetheart, that some individuals, whether they're people or animals, have a special calling personally. It's about understanding that every life has value, that every person deserves to be safe and loved. She reached over and gently touched Maya's hand, where it rested next to her toy badge. Rocky didn't save Tommy because he knew our family or because he expected a reward. He saved Tommy because that's who Rocky is, a protector, a guardian, someone who won't give up when there's a life at stake. Tommy nodded emphatically. That's exactly right. When Rocky looked at me that night, it wasn't like he was looking at a stranger. It was like he was looking at someone he was responsible for protecting, like I was part of his family or something. The profundity of this observation settled over the kitchen like a warm blanket. Here was the heart of what made Rocky's service so extraordinary, not just his exceptional abilities or his years of training, but his capacity to extend his protective instincts, to encompass an entire community, to treat every person he encountered as worthy of his dedication and sacrifice. As the family shared this moment of quiet gratitude, Maya felt something shift inside her chest, a sense of calling that was both thrilling and sobering. She looked down at her toy badge, seeing it now not as a simple plaything, but as a symbol of the responsibility that came with choosing to protect and serve others. As the Chen family prepared to leave their house for the courthouse, the morning routine took on the quality of a ritual. Dr. Chen gathered her purse and car keys while mentally reviewing the day ahead. Her daughter's first experience witnessing the judicial system in action, Tommy's chance to see the conclusion of the case that had grown from his traumatic experience, and the family's opportunity to honor the dog and officer who had saved their son's life. Tommy had finished his hot chocolate and was now gathering his backpack, planning to bring a book to read during any lengthy court proceedings. At 10 years old, he understood the importance of the day, but also recognized that adult legal processes could involve a lot of waiting and complexity that might be difficult for a child to follow. But it was Maya who commanded attention as the family moved through their departure preparations. The 7-year-old stood in the kitchen center, her toy police badge now pinned to the front of her best dress, a navy blue jumper that her mother had chosen specifically because it looked appropriately serious for a court appearance. Maya's posture was straighter than usual, her expression more solemn, as if she were preparing for something far more significant than simply observing a legal proceeding. "Mom," Maya said, her young voice carrying an unusual weight of authority, "I need to tell you something important before we go." Dr. Chen paused in her search for Tommy's jacket for ice cream after court or hoping to sit in the front row. Maya's intensity level had been elevated all morning, but now it seemed to have reached a crescendo that demanded attention. "Of course, sweetheart," Dr. Chen replied, setting aside the jacket and giving Maya her complete focus. "What did you want to tell me?" Maya took a deep breath, her small chest rising and falling, as if she were preparing to make a speech that she had been rehearsing in her mind for weeks or perhaps months. Her hands moved to touch her toy badge, drawing strength or courage from its familiar presence. "I'm going to be a police officer, like Officer Martinez, and have a partner like Rocky," Maya announced, her voice clear and strong despite her young age. Dr. Chen's first impulse was to smile indulgently at what seemed like a typical childhood declaration. Children Maya's age often announced career intentions with great seriousness, wanting to be astronauts, veterinarians, professional athletes, or princesses, depending on whatever had captured their imagination that particular week. As a physician, Dr. Chen had seen countless young patients declare their intention to become doctors after a particularly positive medical experience, only to change their minds when they encountered firefighters or teachers or any number of other professions. But something about Maya's expression stopped Dr. Chen's indulgent smile before it could fully form. This wasn't the dreamy enthusiasm of a child playing pretend or the casual announcement of a temporary interest. Maya's face held the kind of determined intensity that Dr. Chen had learned to recognize in her most seriously committed patients, people who had made genuine decisions that would shape the trajectory of their lives. "That's wonderful, Maya," Dr. Chen said carefully, recognizing that her response needed to match the seriousness of her daughter's announcement. "Being a police officer is very important work. It helps keep people safe." But Maya wasn't finished. Instead of basking in her mother's approval or moving on to other topics as most 7-year-olds might, she launched into an explanation that revealed the depth and sophistication of her thinking. "I've been planning it out," Maya continued, her small hands gesturing as she spoke. "First, I need to get really good grades in school, especially in reading and math and science. Officer Martinez probably had to study a lot to learn about law and justice and how to help people." Dr. Chen felt her eyebrows rise slightly. This level of practical planning was unusual for a child Maya's age, who typically lived very much in the present moment, without much consideration for the long-term steps required to achieve their goals. "And I need to learn about dogs," Maya continued, warming to her subject. "Not just how to play with them or pet them, but how to train them and understand what they're thinking and feeling. Maybe I could study to be a veterinarian first, so I really understand how dogs work inside, and then I could be a police officer with a canine partner." Tommy, who had been listening to his sister's declaration with growing amazement, set down his backpack and moved closer to the conversation. He recognized better than anyone the impact that Rocky's heroism had made on Maya, but even he was surprised by the thoroughness of her planning. "Maya," Tommy said, his voice carrying the authority of an older sibling, "being a police officer is really dangerous work. They have to chase bad guys and go to scary places, and sometimes they could get hurt." Maya turned to look at her brother with an expression that seemed remarkably mature for her age. "Rocky could have got hurt looking for you in the forest," she replied simply. "He could have fallen and broken his leg, or got lost himself, or been attacked by wild animals. But he did it anyway, because you needed help." The logic of this statement hit Tommy with unexpected force. His sister was right. Rocky had faced significant dangers during those 14 hours of searching through rough terrain in darkness and rain. The aging police dog had risked his own safety because a child's life hung in the balance. Maya continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "Dogs don't lie or give up," she said, the words carrying a wisdom that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her 7 years of life experience. "They just love and protect people. That's what I want to do too. Dr. Chen found herself struggling to process the depth of her daughter's commitment. This wasn't simply childhood hero worship or a temporary fascination with police work. Maya was describing a genuine calling, a sense of purpose that had apparently been growing and developing since the night Rocky had saved Tommy's life. "Sweetheart," Dr. Chen said gently, "that's a beautiful goal, and I'm proud of you for wanting to help people. But you know that being a police officer requires many years of training and study, right? You would need to finish high school, probably go to college, and then attend the police academy." Maya nodded seriously. "I know it takes a long time, but Rocky trained for a long time too before he could be a real police dog, and Tommy was lost for a whole night before Rocky found him. Important things take time." The profundity of this observation left both Dr. Chen and Tommy momentarily speechless. Maya had somehow grasped a concept that many adults struggled with, that meaningful achievements required patience, persistence, and long-term dedication. As the family finally gathered their belongings and prepared to walk to the car, Maya clutched her toy badge tighter against her chest. The small piece of plastic had become more than a plaything. It had become a symbol of promise, a reminder of the commitment she was making to follow in the footsteps of the heroes who had saved her brother. Tommy walked alongside his sister, occasionally glancing at her with new respect. He was beginning to understand that Maya's rescue story wasn't just about his own traumatic experience and Rocky's heroic search. It was also about the birth of a calling. The moment when a 7-year-old girl had discovered her life's purpose by witnessing true dedication and sacrifice. As they reached the car, Maya paused for a moment and looked back at their house on Maple Street, the same street where Marcus Webb had committed the burglaries that would be adjudicated in court today. In her young mind, she was already connecting the dots between Tommy's rescue, Rocky's service, and the broader mission of protecting communities from those who would do harm. The weight of her future calling settled on Maya's small shoulders, not as a burden, but as a source of strength and purpose that would guide her through all the years of study and training that lay ahead. The imposing granite facade of the Metropolitan County Courthouse rose against the morning sky like a monument to justice itself. Its classical columns and carved stone figures bearing silent witness to decades of legal proceedings that had shaped the community's understanding of right and wrong. But on this particular morning, the usually sedate atmosphere around the building had been transformed into something resembling a media circus, with news vans lining the street and reporters adjusting their equipment while cameramen tested angles and lighting. Jennifer Walsh, the veteran crime reporter for Channel 7 News, stood at the base of the courthouse steps, conducting what was already her third live broadcast of the morning. Her carefully styled blonde hair moved slightly in the autumn breeze as she spoke directly into the camera, her professional demeanor betraying just a hint of the genuine emotion that this story had evoked in even the most hardened journalists. This is Jennifer Walsh reporting live from the Metropolitan County Courthouse, where in just a few hours we'll witness something truly unprecedented, she announced, her voice carrying the kind of gravitas typically reserved for major political events or natural disasters. Rocky, the legendary police dog whose 12-year career has become the stuff of local legend, will be giving his final testimony before retiring from active duty. Behind Jennifer, the courthouse steps buzzed with activity that seemed almost festival-like in its energy. Photographers from multiple news outlets jockeyed for position, their long telephoto lenses trained on every angle of the scene. Local television crews set up remote broadcasting equipment, while radio reporters conducted interviews with anyone willing to share their Rocky stories. Social media influencers live-streamed their own coverage, their smartphones capturing the human interest angles that traditional media sometimes missed. At the center of all this attention, Officer Sarah Martinez stood with Rocky beside the courthouse's central fountain, patiently answering, keeping a protective eye on her four-legged partner. Rocky, resplendent in his ceremonial collar with its gleaming brass nameplate, sat with perfect police dog posture despite the obvious signs of his advancing age. His graying muzzle and the slight tremor in his hind legs spoke of countless years of dedicated service, but his intelligent brown eyes remained alert and focused, taking in the unusual scene with the calm dignity that had characterized his entire career. "Officer Martinez," called out David Chen from the Metro Tribune, "can you give us some insight into what makes Rocky so special? We've heard stories about his incredible tracking abilities, but what sets him apart from other police dogs?" Sarah's face softened with obvious affection as she looked down at Rocky, her hand instinctively moving to stroke the familiar spot behind his ears. "What makes Rocky extraordinary isn't just his training or his natural abilities," she replied, her voice carrying the weight of 12 years of partnership. "It's his heart." Rocky has always understood that behind every case, every search, every investigation, there are real people whose lives hang in the balance. He's never treated his work as just a job. For Rocky, every mission is personal. A photographer from the Daily Herald seized the moment, his camera capturing the profound connection between officer and canine partner, as Sarah's words painted a picture of dedication that transcended the typical boundaries of professional duty. The image would later appear on the newspaper's front page with the caption, "Partners in Service, a bond beyond words." It was at this moment of media attention and professional reflection that the Chen family's silver Honda Accord pulled into the courthouse parking lot. Dr. Lisa Chen navigated carefully through the crowd of news vans and equipment trucks, searching for a parking space, while her children pressed their faces to the windows, amazed by the scope of the gathering. "Look at all the people," Tommy exclaimed, his voice filled with wonder as he took in the scene. "Are they all here because of Rocky?" Maya, however, had gone completely silent, her small face pressed against the passenger side window as her eyes searched the crowd for the first glimpse of the dog who had saved her brother's life. When she finally spotted Rocky standing beside Officer Martinez, her breath caught in her throat with an audible gasp. "There he is," she whispered, her voice filled with the kind of reverence typically reserved for encountering one's greatest hero. "There's Rocky." The Rocky that Maya saw was different from the vigorous police dog of her imagination, the larger-than-life figure who had emerged from her brother's rescue story. This Rocky showed the clear signs of age and wear. His once jet-black coat, now distinguished with silver around the muzzle, his powerful frame carrying the subtle changes that came with years of dedicated service. Awe. These signs of Rocky's mortality seemed to increase Maya's sense of urgency about her own calling. As the Chen family made their way through the crowd toward the courthouse entrance, Sarah Martinez's trained eye immediately picked out Maya from among the dozens of faces surrounding them. The connection was instant and unmistakable. This was the little girl who had stood at the edge of Willow Creek Forest 13 months ago, clutching her mother's hand while watching Rocky work his tracking magic through the dark woods. "Maya!" Sarah called out, her voice warm with recognition and genuine pleasure. "Maya Chen, is that you?" Maya froze mid-step, her eyes growing wide with the realization that Officer Martinez, her hero's partner, the woman who had trusted Rocky to search through the night, had remembered her name. For a 7-year-old, this level of recognition from an adult authority figure was both thrilling and slightly overwhelming. Dr. Chen guided her daughter forward through the crowd, Tommy following close behind with his own expression of amazed recognition. As they approached, Rocky's ears perked up with interest, and his tail gave a gentle wag that suggested he, too, remembered the family whose crisis had brought them together on that terrible night in the forest. "Officer Martinez," Dr. Chen said, extending her hand with genuine warmth, "it's so good to see you again." And Rocky, she paused, emotion catching in her voice as she looked down at the dog who had saved her son's life. "He looks distinguished." Sarah smiled, understanding the diplomatic way that Dr. Chen had acknowledged Rocky's visible aging, without dwelling on the sadness that his retirement represented. "He's earned every one of those gray whiskers," Sarah replied. "And he's still got that same spirit, that same determination to serve and protect." As if summoned by their conversation, other families began to converge on their location. The Hendersons, an elderly couple whose 78-year-old patriarch had wandered away from their home during an Alzheimer's episode, approached with slow but determined steps. Mrs. Henderson carried a small photo of Rocky that had been featured in the newspaper after their father's rescue, the image now carefully preserved in a protective plastic sleeve. "Officer Martinez!" Mrs. Henderson called out, her voice quavering with age but strong with gratitude. "We couldn't miss Rocky's final day. He brought our father home to us when we thought we'd lost him forever." Close behind the Hendersons came the Garcia family, Maria and Roberto Garcia with their teenage daughter Sofia, whose rescue from a car accident had made headlines 3 years earlier. Sofia, now 16 and healthy, wore a small pin on her jacket lapel featuring Rocky's image, a tribute to the dog whose tracking abilities had located her when she was trapped in a vehicle that had rolled down an embankment and out of sight of the main. Announced to anyone within earshot, her young voice clear and strong with conviction. "I was unconscious and bleeding, and nobody could find where my car had gone off the road. But Rocky found me. He never gave up." Each new arrival added another layer to the emotional tapestry that was forming on the courthouse steps. Mrs. Patterson, 89 years old, and moving with the careful dignity of someone who had seen nearly a century of life's changes, approached with her grandson supporting her elbow. She had insisted on attending despite her family's concerns about the physical demands of the day, determined to honor the dog who had tracked down the purse snatcher who had terrorized her neighborhood. The Johnson family arrived in a group: parents, grandparents, and 3 children, including little Emma, who was now 5, but had been only 2 when she wandered away from a backyard barbecue and spent a terrifying 4 hours missing before Rocky located her, hiding under a neighbor's deck. Emma, too young to remember the rescue, but old enough to understand its importance, carried a hand-drawn picture of Rocky that she had made in kindergarten art class. With each new arrival, Maya's understanding of Rocky's impact began to expand beyond her own family's experience. She had known, intellectually, that Rocky was a police dog who helped many people. But seeing the faces of those he had saved, hearing the gratitude in their voices, witnessing the genuine love and respect they felt for this aging German shepherd, Maya began to comprehend the true scope of what it meant to dedicate one's life to protecting and serving others. "Maya," Tommy whispered, leaning close to his sister's ear, "look how many people Rocky has helped. It's like he's everyone's hero." Maya nodded solemnly, her small hand moving instinctively to touch her toy police badge pinned to her dress. The weight of her own commitment, her promise to follow in Rocky's footsteps, seemed to grow heavier and more real with each story she heard, each grateful face she encountered. As the crowd continued to gather, photographers captured the remarkable scene of multiple generations united by their connection to one extraordinary dog. The images would later appear in newspapers and on social media with captions like "Community Hero" and "A Legacy of Service." But no photograph could truly capture the palpable sense of gratitude and respect that filled the air around the courthouse steps. The interior of Courtroom 3A in the Metropolitan County Courthouse had hosted thousands of legal proceedings over its 50-year history, from routine traffic violations to major criminal trials that had shaped the community's understanding of justice. But as people filed through its heavy oak doors on this particular morning, there was an unmistakable sense that today's proceedings would be different from anything the venerable courtroom had previously witnessed. Judge, veteran of the bench, known for her fair but no-nonsense approach to jurisprudence, entered through her private chamber door at precisely 9:30 a.m., her black robes flowing behind her as she took her place at the elevated judicial bench. As the bailiff called, "All rise," the packed courtroom responded with a rustle of fabric and scraping of chairs that seemed unusually energetic for a typical weekday morning session. "Please be seated," Judge Williams instructed, her experienced gaze sweeping across the gallery to assess the unusual crowd that had gathered. In 3 decades of presiding over legal proceedings, she had developed an intuitive sense for reading the mood and energy of her courtroom, and today's atmosphere was unlike anything she had previously encountered. The gallery was filled to capacity, with every seat occupied and additional observers standing along the back wall. The typical courthouse audience, attorneys waiting for their cases to be called, family members of defendants, and the occasional curious retiree with time to observe the legal system in action, had been joined by a remarkable cross-section of the community that created an almost festival-like atmosphere within the formal confines of the courtroom. Maya Chen sat in the front row of the gallery, her small frame perched on the edge of her seat as she took in every detail of the proceedings with the focused intensity that had become her trademark. Her toy police badge caught the courtroom's fluorescent lighting, creating tiny sparkles that seemed to dance across her navy blue dress as she leaned forward to get the best possible view of the action. Dr. Chen sat beside her daughter, occasionally leaning down to whisper explanations of legal terminology and courtroom procedures, but quickly realizing that Maya's attention was so completely focused on Rocky that she was absorbing the educational aspects of the experience almost by osmosis. Tommy, on Maya's other side, divided his attention between the official proceedings and the remarkable gathering of people who had come to honor Rocky's service. At the prosecution table, Assistant District Attorney Amanda Stevens organized her case files with the methodical precision that had made her one of the most effective prosecutors in the county. Today's case, People v. Marcus Webb, represented the culmination of a months-long investigation into a series of burglaries that had terrorized the Maple Street neighborhood where the Chen family lived. Stevens understood that while the legal aspects of the case were straightforward, the emotional significance of Rocky's final testimony would add layers of complexity to the proceedings. The defendant, eyes carried the kind of restless anxiety that came from knowing one's fate hung in the balance of legal proceedings he didn't fully understand. What was most striking about Webb's demeanor, however, was the way his gaze kept drifting back toward Rocky, who lay with calm dignity beside Officer Martinez in the witness area. There was something in Webb's expression, not quite fear, but a kind of recognition that suggested he understood exactly how Rocky's abilities had led to his capture and prosecution. "Your Honor," Prosecutor Stevens began, rising from her seat with the confident bearing of someone thoroughly prepared for the task ahead. The people are ready to proceed with the case of People versus Marcus Webb. As the court is aware, this case involves a series of residential burglaries that occurred in the Maple Street neighborhood between June and September of this year. Stevens moved to the center of the courtroom, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the packed gallery. The defendant stands accused of breaking into 7 different homes, stealing property valued at over $15,000, and causing immeasurable emotional distress to the families whose sense of safety and security he violated. Maya listened intently to every word, her young mind working to understand how the adult world of legal proceedings connected to her family's experience of having their neighborhood terrorized by someone who violated the sanctity of people's homes. She remembered her mother's increased anxiety during those months, the way Dr. Chen had started double-checking all the door locks before bed and insisting that Maya and Tommy stay inside after dark. What makes this case particularly significant, Stevens continued, is that it represents the final investigation of police officer Rocky, whose 12 years of distinguished service to this community have made him a legend in law enforcement circles. Rocky's tracking abilities led directly to the defendant's apprehension and to the recovery of stolen property from multiple burglaries. At the mention of Rocky's name, a subtle shift rippled through the courtroom gallery. People leaned forward slightly, their attention sharpening as they prepared to witness history in the making, the final testimony of a police dog whose career had become the stuff of local legend. Rocky himself seemed to sense the increased attention, his ears perking up slightly, though he maintained the perfect composure that had characterized his courtroom appearances throughout his career. His intelligent brown eyes surveyed the packed gallery, taking in the unusual number of familiar faces, people whose lives he had touched during his years of service. Judge Williams, who had been observing the proceedings with her characteristic blend of judicial authority and human curiosity, made a decision that would later be remembered as one of the most unusual moments in the courthouse's history. "Before we proceed," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of judicial authority, "I think it's important to acknowledge the extraordinary circumstances of today's proceedings. It's not often that our courtroom hosts the final testimony of someone who has served our community with such distinction for so many years." The judge's words created a moment of hushed anticipation throughout the courtroom. Maya felt her heart beating faster as she realized that Judge Williams was about to formally recognize Rocky's service in a way that elevated him from merely being a piece of evidence to being acknowledged as the community hero she had always known him to be. "Officer Rocky," Judge Williams continued, looking directly at the German Shepherd who had risen to a sitting position beside Officer Martinez, "on behalf of this court and the community we serve, I want to express our gratitude for your 12 years of faithful service. Your dedication to protecting and serving the citizens of our county has made all of our lives safer and more secure." The courtroom erupted in spontaneous applause, a breach of typical courtroom decorum that Judge Williams chose not to discourage. Maya clapped with particular enthusiasm, her small hands creating sharp sounds that seemed disproportionately loud in the formal setting. Around her, the families Rocky had helped over the years joined in the tribute, their applause creating a wave of gratitude and respect that filled every corner of the historic courtroom. As the applause died down and Judge Williams restored order to the courtroom, the full scope of Rocky's impact on the community became increasingly apparent through the faces and stories represented in the packed gallery. Each person present carried with them a personal connection to the aging German Shepherd, creating a living tapestry of lives touched, families reunited, and justice served through 12 years of dedicated police work. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, seated 3 rows behind Maya, with her walker folded and stored beside her chair, nodded approvingly as she observed the proceedings. At 89, Mrs. Patterson had lived through the Great Depression, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, and countless other historical moments. But she often said that Rocky's capture of the purse snatcher who had terrorized her neighborhood 3 years ago ranked among the most personally significant events of her long life. The incident had occurred on a Tuesday afternoon when Mrs. Patterson was returning from her weekly grocery shopping trip, moving slowly down the sidewalk with her walker loaded with bags from the supermarket. The attack had come from behind. A young man who grabbed her purse and knocked her to the ground before fleeing on foot through the maze of alleyways that connected her neighborhood's older homes. What Mrs. Patterson remembered most vividly wasn't the fear or the physical pull. Her age made her an easy target. That rage had transformed into profound gratitude when Rocky tracked the purse snatcher through 6 blocks of urban terrain, leading Officer Martinez and 2 other officers directly to the abandoned garage where the perpetrator had been hiding with stolen goods from multiple victims. "That dog gave me my dignity back," Mrs. Patterson had told everyone who would listen in the days following the arrest. "Rocky showed that young man that you can't just prey on old people and expect to get away with it." Seated across the aisle from Mrs. Patterson, the Johnson family occupied an entire row, their presence a testament to the way Rocky's heroism had impacted multiple generations. Robert and Linda Johnson sat with their 3 children and Robert's parents, all of them united by their connection to the terrifying 4 hours when 2-year-old Emma had wandered away from a backyard barbecue and disappeared into the neighborhood. The search for Emma had involved dozens of volunteers, police officers, and family members combing through yards, parks, and vacant lots in ever-widening circles around the Johnson home. As the hours passed and daylight began to fade, the search had taken on increasingly desperate tones, with everyone involved fearing the worst-case scenarios that haunted parents' nightmares. Rocky had arrived with Officer Martinez as part of the official police response, and within 30 minutes of beginning his search, he had led the team directly to the neighbor's backyard deck, where Emma had crawled underneath and fallen asleep among the stored lawn furniture. The toddler had been frightened and dehydrated, but otherwise unharmed, and Rocky's gentle demeanor during the rescue had helped calm her fears as paramedics checked her over. 5-year-old Emma Johnson now sat between her parents, clutching the hand-drawn picture of Rocky that she had created in kindergarten art class. The drawing showed Rocky as she imagined him, larger than life, with a heroic cape and a smile that suggested his inherent goodness. While Emma was too young to remember the details of her rescue, she had grown up hearing the story and understanding that Rocky was the reason her family remained whole. Near the back of the courtroom, Maria and Roberto Garcia sat with their 16-year-old daughter Sophia, whose rescue 3 years earlier had tested Rocky's abilities in ways that even his extensive training hadn't fully prepared him for. Sophia's car accident had occurred on a rainy night when she was driving home from her job at a local restaurant. Her vehicle had skidded off a winding rural road and rolled down an embankment, coming to rest in a ravine that was invisible from the roadway. The initial search for Sophia had been complicated by the fact that her car's final position couldn't be seen from any conventional search angle. Police helicopters had flown over the area multiple times without spotting the wreckage, and Growl walked within 50 feet of her location without detecting any signs of the accident. Rocky's involvement had come after 8 hours of unsuccessful searching, when Officer Martinez suggested that the K9 unit might be able to pick up scent traces that human searches had missed. Working in difficult terrain during persistent rainfall, Rocky had methodically followed a scent trail that led searches away from the road and down the steep embankment to where Sophia's car had come to rest. Sophia, now healthy and thriving as a high school junior, wore a small enamel pin on her jacket lapel, featuring Rocky's image, a tribute that she had worn to every important event in her life since the rescue. Her presence in the courtroom represented not just her family's gratitude, but her own determination to honor the dog whose persistence had quite literally saved her life. As Maya observed all of these faces, all of these stories represented in the courtroom's packed gallery, her understanding of Rocky's legacy began to expand in ways that fundamentally altered her perception of what it meant to serve and protect others. She had known that Rocky was special. The dog who had saved Tommy was obviously heroic by any measure, but seeing the scope of his impact on so many different families, so many different lives, helped Maya comprehend the true meaning of a life dedicated to service. "Tommy," Maya whispered to her brother, leaning close so her words wouldn't disturb the court proceedings. "Look at all the people Rocky has helped. It's like he's been protecting our whole community." Tommy nodded, his own eyes wide as he took in the emotional significance of the gathering. "It's like every person here has their own Tommy story," he replied quietly. "Rocky has been saving people and bringing families back together for 12 years. Dr. Chen, overhearing her children's whispered conversation, felt her own understanding of the day's significance deepening. She had come to the courthouse primarily to show Maya how the justice system worked, to provide her daughter with an educational experience about civic responsibility and legal proceedings. But what was unfolding before them transcended any textbook lesson about courtroom procedure or criminal justice. What they were witnessing was the culmination of a career dedicated to service, the final chapter in a story of heroism that had touched dozens of families and shaped an entire community's understanding of what it meant to protect and serve. Rocky wasn't just retiring from his job as a police dog. He was concluding a legacy that would be remembered and celebrated long after he had left active duty. Even the court stenographer, a consummate professional who had recorded thousands of legal proceedings with practiced neutrality, found herself pausing occasionally in her work, moved by the palpable sense of gratitude and respect that filled every corner of the courtroom. This wasn't just another criminal case to be processed and filed away. This was a community's tribute to one of its most beloved protectors. As the morning's proceedings continued to unfold, Maya felt the weight of her own commitment growing heavier and more real on her small shoulders. The toy police badge pinned to her dress seemed to carry increased significance as she realized that her promise to follow in Rocky's footsteps wasn't just about her family's gratitude for Tommy's rescue. It was about accepting responsibility for continuing a legacy of service that had made their entire community safer, stronger, and more connected to the values of protection, dedication, and never giving up on those who needed help. The atmosphere in courtroom 3A shifted palpably as Judge Patricia Williams made a decision that would forever alter the courthouse's history. Rising from her bench with the measured dignity that had characterized her 28 years of judicial service, she looked out over the packed gallery and then down at the remarkable German shepherd who sat beside Officer Martinez in the witness area. "Ladies and gentlemen," Judge Williams announced, her voice carrying the weight of precedent being shattered, "in my nearly 3 decades on this bench, I have presided over thousands of cases involving countless witnesses. But never before have I had the privilege of acknowledging a witness whose service to our community has been as distinguished, as consistent, and as selfless as that of Police Officer Rocky." The courtroom fell into complete silence, the kind of hushed anticipation that occurs when everyone present realizes they are about to witness something truly historic. Maya Chen sat on the edge of her seat in the front row, her small hands gripping the wooden bench as she absorbed every word of Judge Williams' unprecedented announcement. Therefore, the judge continued, I am going to do something that has never been done in this courthouse before. I am going to formally acknowledge Officer Rocky's service with a ceremonial swearing-in that recognizes not just his role as evidence in today's proceedings, but his status as a true officer of the law who has dedicated his life to protecting and serving our community. The gallery stirred with emotion as the implications of Judge Williams' words sank in. This wasn't simply a criminal trial anymore. It had become a formal recognition ceremony for a career of service that had touched dozens of lives and shaped the community's understanding of dedication and heroism. Officer Sarah Martinez rose from her seat, understanding instinctively what the judge was asking of her. Her movements were careful and deliberate as she approached Rocky, who seemed to sense the gravity of the moment and struggled to his feet despite the obvious discomfort in his aging joints. For 12 years, Sarah had guided Rocky through countless situations that required precision, courage, and unwavering focus. But this moment felt different, more sacred somehow, as if they were participating in a ritual that transcended the typical boundaries of police work. Officer Martinez, Judge Williams addressed Sarah directly. Would you please place your hand on Officer Rocky's head as I administer this acknowledgement? Sarah's hand found its familiar place behind Rocky's ears, that special spot where her touch had always conveyed reassurance, guidance, and unconditional partnership.
As her fingers made contact with his graying fur, she felt the familiar surge of connection that had sustained their partnership through every challenge they had faced together. Rocky sat with perfect police dog posture, his intelligent brown eyes focused on Judge Williams, as if he understood exactly what was happening. Despite his physical limitations, the subtle tremor in his hind legs, the gray mask around his muzzle that spoke of advancing age, his bearing remained dignified and alert, embodying everything that made him legendary in law enforcement circles.
Rocky,
Judge Williams began, her voice carrying both judicial authority and genuine warmth.
you have served this community with honor and distinction for 12 years. In that time, you have saved lives, solved crimes, brought closure to families, and demonstrated the very best qualities of dedication, courage, and selfless service.
Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes as she listened to Judge Williams's words. This formal acknowledgement of Rocky's service validated everything she had always believed about the dog who had saved her brother, that he was more than just a police dog, more than just a highly trained animal following commands. He was a true hero whose service deserved the same recognition given to human officers who dedicated their lives to protecting others.
Today,
Judge Williams continued,
we ask for your final service, to help us understand the events that led to this case, to use your extraordinary abilities one last time to ensure that justice is served and our community remains safe from those who would do harm.
The courthouse photographer, who had been given special permission to document this historic moment, moved quietly around the courtroom, capturing images that would later appear in newspapers and museums as evidence of the day when a police dog received formal judicial recognition for his service. The main photograph, Judge Williams speaking directly to Rocky, while Officer Martinez's hand rested protectively on his head, would become iconic, representing a moment when the legal system acknowledged that heroism could take many forms.
Do you, Rocky, understand the importance of your testimony today?
Judge Williams asked, her question carrying the same weight as any oath administered to human witnesses. Rocky
Gave a single, dignified wag, and he tilted his head slightly, the same gesture he had made countless times when receiving instructions from Officer Martinez before beginning a search. To everyone watching, it seemed clear that Rocky understood not just the importance of the moment, but his role in ensuring that justice would be served. The courtroom remained in absolute silence as Judge Williams completed the unprecedented ceremony. Then I formally acknowledge you, Officer Rocky, as a witness in these proceedings, and I thank you for your willingness to serve our community one final time. Maya watched this extraordinary scene unfold with an intensity that burned every detail into her memory. This was the moment when the adult world of law and justice formally recognized what she had always known in her 7-year-old heart, that Rocky represented something pure and noble, something worth aspiring to become. The toy police badge pinned to her dress seemed to grow heavier with significance as she witnessed this formal acknowledgement of the values she had committed to pursuing. Tommy, seated beside his sister, reached over and squeezed Maya's hand as the ceremony concluded. He understood better than anyone how much this moment meant to her, how it validated her decision to dedicate her life to following in Rocky's footsteps. In his young mind, he was witnessing not just his sister's hero being honored, but the formal beginning of Maya's own journey toward becoming the kind of person who deserved such recognition. Dr. Chen, observing her daughter's rapt attention and obvious emotional investment in the proceedings, felt a profound shift in her understanding of Maya's career aspirations. This wasn't a childhood phase or a temporary fascination with police work. This was a genuine calling that had been inspired by witnessing true heroism and was now being validated by the formal recognition of the values Maya sought to embody. Following the unprecedented swearing-in ceremony, Prosecutor Amanda Stevens rose to present the evidence that would form the foundation of the case against Marcus Webb. But what began as a routine presentation of forensic evidence quickly evolved into something far more dramatic, when Judge Williams made another decision that would add to the day's historic significance. "Your Honor," Stevens began, approaching the evidence table where sealed containers held various items collected from the crime scenes. "The prosecution would like to present evidence, item 7A, which consists of scent samples collected from the defendant's escape route following the burglary at 423 Maple Street on September 15th. Judge Williams examined the evidence tag and nodded her approval, but then surprised everyone in the courtroom with an unusual request. "Prosecutor Stevens, given that we have Officer Rocky present for what will be his final testimony, and considering the unique nature of today's proceedings, would it be possible to provide the court with a demonstration of how this scent evidence led to the defendant's apprehension?" Stevens paused, clearly considering the implications of such an unconventional request. In her 8 years as a prosecutor, she had never been asked to provide a live demonstration of police dog tracking abilities within the formal confines of a courtroom. But the educational value of such a demonstration, combined with the historic nature of Rocky's final testimony, made the request compelling. "Your Honor," Stevens replied, "I believe such a demonstration would be both possible and highly instructive for the court. However, I would want to ensure that proper precautions are taken and that the defendant's rights are fully protected." Defense attorney Michael Cross rose immediately to voice his objections. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. My client has the right to a fair trial, not to be subjected to what amounts to a circus demonstration designed to prejudice the jury against him." But Judge Williams had clearly given this decision considerable thought. "Mr. Cross, I understand your concerns, but I believe the educational value of understanding how this evidence was collected outweighs the potential for prejudice. The court will ensure that the demonstration is conducted in a controlled manner that respects your client's rights, while providing insight into police procedures that led to his apprehension." Maya leaned forward in her seat, her heart racing with excitement at the possibility of seeing Rocky work the way he had during Tommy's rescue. This would be her first opportunity to witness firsthand the incredible abilities that had made Rocky legendary throughout the police department. Officer Martinez was called forward to handle the demonstration, and she approached with the practiced professionalism that had characterized her entire career. "Your Honor," she explained, "I want to emphasize that this demonstration will show only Rocky's scent detection abilities. The actual tracking that led to Mr. Webb's apprehension involved following a trail over several blocks and required extensive ground coverage that obviously can't be replicated in a courtroom setting." With careful handling, Sarah opened the sealed evidence container that held fabric samples collected from various points along Webb's escape route. The scent evidence had been preserved according to strict forensic protocols, ensuring that it retained the olfactory signatures that had allowed Rocky to track the suspect from the crime scene to his hiding place. Rocky, who had been resting quietly beside the witness stand, immediately became alert as the familiar pre-work routines began. Despite his age and physical limitations, his exceptional nose detected the scent traces even before Sarah had fully prepared the sample. His ears perked up, his posture straightened, and his intelligent eyes focused on Sarah with the laser-like intensity that had made him such an effective police dog. "Rocky, search," Sarah commanded, using the familiar directive that had initiated thousands of tracking operations throughout their partnership. Transformation in Rocky was immediate and remarkable. The aging dog, whose physical limitations had been increasingly apparent, suddenly moved with purpose and confidence, his nose working methodically as he processed the scent information that humans couldn't even detect. His tracking behavior was textbook perfect. Head lowered, nostrils flaring, movement deliberate and focused as he followed the scent trail that existed only in his extraordinary olfactory world. The courtroom watched in complete silence as Rocky methodically worked his way around the witness area, following invisible traces of scent that told him a story as clear and detailed as any written narrative. His nose led him first toward the gallery, then back toward the center of the courtroom, as he processed complex scent layers that revealed not just the presence of his target, but the direction and timing of movement. Maya watched with breathless fascination as Rocky demonstrated the same incredible abilities that had located Tommy in the dark forest. She could see the intense concentration on Rocky's face, the way his entire being focused on the task at hand with a dedication that transcended mere training or instinct. This was Rocky's calling, his gift, his way of serving and protecting others. The climax of the demonstration came when Rocky's methodical tracking led him directly toward the defense table, where Marcus Webb sat watching with obvious discomfort. Rocky approached with the same careful precision he had shown throughout the demonstration, his nose confirming what his training had taught him to recognize. When Rocky reached Webb's chair, he stopped and sat down, the universal police dog signal for "found." The gesture was simple, undramatic in its execution, but profoundly powerful in its implications. Here, in the formal setting of a courtroom, Rocky had just demonstrated the exact same abilities that had led police officers directly to Webb's hiding place following the burglary. The courtroom gasped collectively as the implications of Rocky's actions became clear. This wasn't just a demonstration of police dog training. It was a real-time confirmation that Marcus Webb had been at the crime scene, that his scent signature matched the evidence collected during the investigation. Defense Attorney Cross leaped to his feet immediately. "Your Honor, I object. This demonstration is nothing more than prosecutorial theater, designed to prejudice the court against my client. There's no scientific basis for this kind of evidence, But Cross's objections were drowned out by the murmur of amazement that rippled through the gallery. The people who had gathered to honor Rocky's service had just witnessed a master craftsman at work, demonstrating abilities that seemed almost supernatural in their precision and reliability. Judge Williams restored order to the courtroom with several sharp raps of her gavel. "Mr. Cross, your objection is noted for the record. However, I find, Webb, that this demonstration has provided valuable insight into the investigative techniques that led to your client's apprehension. The court will consider this evidence in the context of the broader forensic case being presented." Maya sat transfixed by what she had witnessed. She had heard stories about Rocky's tracking abilities, had imagined how he might work based on Tommy's descriptions of his rescue. But seeing those abilities demonstrated with such precision and authority exceeded even her most vivid expectations. This was what she wanted to be able to do, to use special skills and training to help solve crimes, find lost people, and ensure that those who committed crimes were held accountable for their actions. As Rocky returned to Officer Martinez's side, his tail wagging with the satisfaction of a job well done, Maya felt her commitment to following in his footsteps solidify into something approaching destiny. She had witnessed not just exceptional police work, but a calling fulfilled, a life dedicated to service demonstrated with precision and grace. With the dramatic demonstration concluded and Rocky settled once again beside the witness stand, Judge Williams called Officer Sarah Martinez to provide formal testimony about her partnership with Rocky and the specific investigation that had led to Marcus Webb's apprehension. As Sarah rose and walked toward the witness stand, the weight of this final testimony, the last time she would officially represent Rocky's work in a court of law, settled heavily on her shoulders. The court clerk administered the oath with the same formal language used for every witness, but Sarah's "I do" carried additional significance, as she understood that her testimony would serve not just as evidence in a criminal case, but as the official record of a partnership that had defined both her career and Rocky's legacy. Prosecutor Stevens began her examination with routine questions designed to establish Sarah's credentials and experience. But even these preliminary inquiries carried emotional weight given the context of Rocky's retirement. "Officer Martinez," Stevens began, "please tell the court about your experience with K-9 operations and your specific partnership with Rocky." Sarah's voice was steady and professional as she began her response, drawing on 12 years of practice in providing courtroom testimony about Rocky's work. "I have been a K-9 officer with the Metropolitan Police Department for 12 years, and Rocky has been my partner for that entire period. We completed our initial training together at the Regional Police K-9 Academy, and we have worked together on over 400 cases involving everything from narcotics detection to missing person searches to criminal tracking." Stevens nodded and continued with questions designed to establish Rocky's exceptional record of service. "Can you describe Rocky's success rate in tracking and detection work?" "Rocky's track record is extraordinary," Sarah replied, her voice warming with obvious pride in her partner. "In 12 years of active duty, he has successfully completed 98.7% of his assigned tracking operations. He has located 43 missing persons, led to the apprehension of over 100 suspects, and contributed to the recovery of stolen property valued at more than $3 million. Maya listened to these statistics with growing amazement. She had known that Rocky was special, had understood that his rescue of Tommy represented exceptional police work, but hearing the full scope of his career achievements presented in formal testimony helped her comprehend the true magnitude of his service to the community. "Officer Martinez," Stevens continued, "please describe the specific investigation that led to Marcus Webb's apprehension." Sarah's testimony became more detailed as she recounted the weeks-long investigation into the Maple Street burglaries. She described the pattern of break-ins that had terrorized the neighborhood, the increasing boldness of the perpetrator, and the pressure from community members who felt unsafe in their own homes. "The breakthrough came on September 15th, Sarah explained, when we responded to a burglary in progress at 423 Maple Street. The homeowner, Mrs. Chen, called 911 to report that someone was moving around downstairs while she and her children were trapped upstairs. Maya's attention intensified at the mention of her mother's name. This was her family's story being told in official legal proceedings, their experience of victimization becoming part of the formal record that would determine Marcus Webb's fate. When we arrived at the scene, Sarah continued, the perpetrator had already fled, but Rocky was able to pick up a strong scent trail from the point of entry. The tracking conditions were challenging. It was raining lightly, and the suspect had attempted to confuse the trail by running through several yards with strong competing scents from pets and lawn care products. Sarah's voice took on the professional tone she used when describing technical aspects of police work, but Maya could detect the underlying emotion as Sarah recounted what would be one of Rocky's final cases. Rocky tracked the suspect's route for approximately 8 blocks, through residential neighborhoods, across a busy street, and finally to an abandoned garage where the suspect was hiding with stolen property from multiple burglaries. Sarah testified, the entire tracking operation took approximately 2 hours and led directly to Webb's apprehension and the recovery of stolen goods from 7 different crime scenes. Defense attorney Cross began his cross-examination with questions designed to challenge the reliability of Rocky's tracking work, but his inquiries only served to highlight the exceptional nature of Rocky's abilities and training. Officer Martinez, Cross asked, isn't it true that police dogs can make mistakes that scent tracking is not?
100%. Reliable? Sarah's response was both professional and passionate. Mr. Cross, in 12 years of partnership, Rocky has never led us to the wrong suspect. His tracking work is supported by extensive documentation, corroborating evidence, and a success rate that speaks for itself. Rocky doesn't guess. He follows scent evidence with scientific precision. But it was when Prosecutor Stevens asked about Rocky's current condition that Sarah's professional composure began to crack, revealing the deep, emotional cost of watching her partner age and decline. Officer Martinez, Stevens asked gently, can you describe Rocky's current physical condition and how it has affected his ability to serve? Sarah's voice trembled slightly as she began her response. Rocky has served beyond what we could ever ask of any officer, human or canine. He is 12 years old, which is considered senior for a German Shepherd, and he is experiencing the physical challenges that come with age and years of demanding service. Maya leaned forward, sensing that Sarah was about to share something profoundly important about Rocky's condition and the sacrifice that continued service represented for the aging dog. His hips are failing, Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly as she spoke about Rocky's physical limitations. He has arthritis that makes movement painful, his hearing isn't what it was, and he tires much more easily than he used to. But his heart, Sarah paused, gathering her composure, his heart is still that of a protector. Rocky's spirit, his dedication to serving and protecting others, remains as strong as ever. The courtroom fell completely silent as Sarah's words revealed the personal cost of Rocky's continued service. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes as she understood for the first time that Rocky had been working through pain, pushing beyond his physical limitations, because that was simply who he was, a dog who never gave up when people needed help. Even with his physical limitations, Sarah continued, Rocky insisted on working this final case. When we got the call about the burglary at Mrs. Chen's house, Rocky could have stayed in the car. I would have understood, but he insisted on working, pushed through his discomfort to track Webb's route because that's who Rocky is. He's a dog who never gives up, never stops protecting people, even when it costs him personally. Sarah's emotional testimony painted a picture of heroism that transcended species, revealing Rocky as an individual whose commitment to service went far beyond training or instinct. Maya absorbed every word, understanding that true heroism sometimes meant working despite personal cost, pushing through pain and limitation because others were counting on you. The silence in the courtroom was broken only by the occasional sniffle from the gallery, where Rocky's saves and their families listened to the formal documentation of a career that had touched their lives in the most profound ways. This wasn't just testimony about police procedures or criminal investigation. It was a tribute to a life dedicated to service, a career spent protecting and serving others, regardless of personal cost. As Sarah concluded her testimony and stepped down from the witness stand, she paused to place her hand on Rocky's head one more time, a gesture that conveyed 12 years of partnership, respect, and love. Rocky looked up at her with those intelligent brown eyes that had witnessed so much human suffering and had worked so hard to alleviate it, and his tail gave a gentle wag that seemed to say, "We did good work together." Judge Patricia Williams called a 30-minute recess after Officer Martinez's moving testimony, sensing the courtroom needed to absorb what they'd just witnessed. The trial had shifted from legal proceeding to something closer to a community tribute for Rocky, the retiring canine who had shaped so many lives. In the hallway, conversations hummed in low tones. Parents from the Maple Street neighborhood clustered together, speaking of Marcus Webb's crimes and their gratitude for Rocky. Nearby, children who'd been rescued or protected by him traded stories. But Maya Chen, 7 years old, had her eyes only on Rocky. He lay on a blanket outside the courtroom, ceremonial collar catching the light. Age had settled heavily on him, tremors in his hind legs, labored breathing, but his gaze was still sharp. Officer Martinez stood a few feet away, talking with the prosecutor about the morning's demonstration. With quiet determination, Maya slipped from her mother's side and crossed the marble floor. Rocky's ears lifted at her approach. His tail wagged once, slow and dignified. She knelt, resting a small hand behind his ear. "Hi, Rocky," she whispered. "I'm Tommy's sister. You saved my brother, and that means you saved my whole family." He stayed still, eyes fixed on her. "I've been thinking about you every day since that night," she went on, stroking his graying fur. "Tommy said you stayed with him, gentle and kind, until help came. I saw you never give up, even when it was hard and scary. You didn't know him, but you worked like he was your own family. That's what heroes do." Rocky shifted closer. Officer Martinez glanced over, sensing something more than a simple thank you. "I heard them say you're retiring," Maya said softly, "that this is your last case. But I want you to know, just because you're retiring doesn't mean your work is ending." She leaned in, her voice low and sure. "When you can't work anymore, I'll be your legs and help people for you." Rocky's tail thumped once. "I promise I'll become a police officer like Officer Martinez," she continued. Had heard many thank yous in her career, but never a child making a vow with such weight. Maya's voice strengthened. "I know it'll take a long time. I'll study hard, train hard, because if you could work all night in the cold to find Tommy, I can do whatever it takes." Rocky lifted a paw and set it gently on her hand, as if sealing the promise. By now people had gathered. Mrs. Patterson, the Henderson family, others Rocky had once saved. They stood in silence as Maya continued. "I polish my police badge every morning. I read about law and justice. I want to get good at reading, math, and science. Maybe be a vet first, so I can understand dogs better." Officer Martinez knelt beside them. "Maya, that's a beautiful promise. But being a police officer is hard and can be dangerous." Maya met her eyes without wavering. "Rocky didn't give up when it was hard. If he could do that for my brother, I can do what it takes for others." Sarah, realizing this was no childish fantasy, asked, "What's your plan?"
Good grades first, Maya said, ticking points on her fingers. Learn law so I can help the right way. Learn about dogs so I can be the best partner. It might take 15 years, but important things take time. Just like Rocky's training. The onlookers exchanged glances, recognizing this was the birth of a calling. Sarah's voice softened. I believe you, and I think Rocky does too. She looked at the dog, paw still resting on Maya's hand. If you're serious, Sarah added, I'll help you. Teach you about police work, canine training, what it means to serve and protect. Maya's face lit up. You would really help me? I'd be honored, Sarah said. As the recess ended, the small circle knew they'd witnessed a passing of the torch. Rocky's tail wagged slowly, his paw still over Maya's hand, a blessing on the promise that his legacy would live on. The 30-minute recess had changed the Metropolitan County Courthouse in ways no one expected. What began as routine proceedings had shifted into something like a community gathering, sparked by 7-year-old Maya's heartfelt promise to Rocky, the retiring police dog. Court staff whispered about it, the janitor repeated it, and word even reached Judge Patricia Williams, known for her strict decorum. When everyone returned to courtroom 3A, the earlier tension between lawyers, officials, and the public had softened. Maya sat in the front row, her toy police badge now seeming like a symbol of genuine purpose. Her mother, Dr. Chen, realized she was witnessing the birth of something life-defining. Judge Williams, her voice unusually warm, announced, I understand we have a young witness who wishes to speak about Officer Rocky's character. Maya Chen, the judge said, would you like to address the court? The room stilled. Stopped when she saw her daughter's determined eyes. It's all right, Mom. I know what I want to say. Passing Rocky, Maya rested her small hand on his head, drawing courage before stepping to the microphone. Your Honor, she began, my name is Maya Chen, and Rocky saved my family. 13 months earlier, during a camping trip, her 9-year-old brother Tommy had wandered off into Willow Creek Forest. Night fell, rain began, and hope started to fade. Some searchers wanted to wait until morning, Maya said, but Rocky never stopped. He knew someone was counting on him. For 14 hours, through cold rain and difficult terrain, Rocky tracked Tommy's scent until he found him shivering under a log. Tommy said Rocky was gentle and stayed right by him until help came. Maya's young voice carried wisdom beyond her years. Rocky didn't save Tommy for a reward. He saved him because that's who he is. Someone who protects because it's right. Then she revealed a promise that had spread through the courthouse. I told Rocky that when he can't work anymore, I'll be his legs. I'll become a police officer like Officer Martinez, have a partner like Rocky, and find lost people, catch bad guys, and keep families safe. Tears welled in Judge Williams's eyes. Parents in the gallery glanced at their children, wondering if any carried such a calling. But it's not just about a job, Maya continued. Rocky taught me that helping people is who you are inside. You don't give up, even when you're tired or scared. Her gaze landed on the defendant, Marcus Webb. Rocky never stopped believing lost people can be found, and bad choices can be made right. Even when someone does wrong, he believed they could change. She admitted the road ahead was long. I'll have to study hard, learn about law and canine work. But Rocky worked 12 years to help people. I can work hard too. Officer Martinez will teach me what it really means to serve. Finally, she asked the court to remember Rocky not just as a great police dog, but as a teacher who showed us to never give up on people, that every family deserves safety, and that someone should always care enough to help. Silence followed. Maya had turned a criminal trial into something sacred, a community pledge to carry forward Rocky's legacy. As she returned to her seat, touching Rocky's head once more, the sense was clear. Everyone present had been changed in ways they were only beginning to understand. Maya Chen's testimony transformed Courtroom 3A from a formal legal venue into something resembling sacred ground, where service, sacrifice, and dedication were defined by a child. The bench struggled to maintain her usual composure. She had heard victims' families and tearful defendants before, but nothing had prepared her for the unfiltered conviction of a 7-year-old. Removing her glasses to clean them, she wiped away tears. Later, she would tell colleagues, "I have never witnessed anything that moved me as profoundly as that child's testimony." The gallery felt it too. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson, 89, remembered the day Rocky tracked down the man who had stolen her purse. "True heroism," she whispered, "isn't about strength. It's about refusing to give up when someone needs help." The Henderson family recalled the night Rocky found their elderly father in a drainage ditch, refusing to quit even when others were ready to stop. Maya's words bridged those memories with the present, making Rocky's legacy feel eternal. Even courthouse staff were moved. Bailiff Robert Crawford, jaded after 23 years, felt his original sense of duty stir again. Stenographer Linda Morrison, usually detached, had stopped typing altogether. "I've recorded thousands of testimonies," she later admitted, "but this was the first time I forgot to type." For defense attorney Michael Cross, the moment was less inspiring than destabilizing. His legal strategy suddenly felt irrelevant. In the face of a moral truth no cross-examination could touch. Across from him, Marcus Webb, accused burglar and career criminal, sat frozen. Maya's words pierced the walls he had built since his first arrest at 17. Then came the gut punch. She was one of his victims. On the night he broke into the Chen home, she and her brother had been upstairs, terrified. Now the little girl whose life he had invaded was speaking about faith in redemption. Memories surfaced, of his own childhood dreams to help people, of the moment that idealism died. Maya's testimony made him question whether he could reclaim it. Her words about Rocky's belief that lost people can be found felt like a personal challenge. Looking at her in the front row, wearing a toy badge and a serious expression, Webb saw hope, not judgment, in her eyes. For the first time in years, he wondered if change was possible. The impact radiated outward. Tommy Chen, beside his sister, realized his own misadventure in Willow Creek Forest. When Rocky found him, had sparked her calling. His voice brimmed with pride. "She's going to help so many people." Dr. Lisa Chen recognized that this wasn't a phase, but a vocation, already considering how to connect her daughter with mentors in law enforcement. Other children were inspired too. Emma Johnson, rescued by Rocky at age 5, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Can I be a police officer like Maya?" Around the room, parents saw seeds of service being planted that she thought would be a retirement story. Now saw the beginning of a movement. Into her recorder, she whispered, "This isn't just about a police dog's retirement. It's about ripple effects that can transform communities." Even Clerk of Court Margaret Thompson paused her work to observe. "In 25 years," she said later, "I've never seen proceedings turn into a community celebration of shared values." Adults asked themselves what they were doing to protect and serve their neighbors. Business owner Tom Bradley began planning to fund youth programs that could foster more Mayas.
Conversations bloomed among strangers. Mrs. Patterson made her way to the Chens. "Your daughter has given all of us a gift. She's reminded us what it means to make our community better." She promised Maya her support. The girl, grave but determined, replied, "It will take years to learn what I need, but I'm going to study really hard." In that exchange, between an elderly crime victim and a young, aspiring officer, Rocky's legacy bridged generations. His final case had become a catalyst for a community-wide recommitment to the values he embodied: service, protection, and never giving up on others. The silence after Maya returned to her seat was unlike anything Courtroom 3A had ever experienced. It wasn't the routine hush of legal formality. It was the deep stillness that follows a truth so profound everyone must pause to absorb it. Judge Patricia Williams sat motionless, hands folded, reflecting on the unprecedented testimony she had just heard. In 3 decades, she had never presided over a proceeding transformed so completely. Maya's words had lifted the trial above legal technicalities into questions of morality, service, and human purpose. Prosecutor Amanda Stevens, her notes suddenly secondary, recognized that Maya had provided character evidence for Rocky more powerful than any expert. But it had also shifted the entire moral framework of the case. Defense attorney Michael Cross prepared to call character witnesses from Marcus Webb, aiming to frame him as a victim of addiction rather than a calculating criminal. Yet Maya's testimony had made traditional maneuvering seem inadequate, even inappropriate. At the defense table, Webb sat frozen. His usual nervous fidgeting was gone, replaced by a stillness born of internal upheaval. Trembling hands lay on the table, not from fear of sentencing, but from the weight of genuine remorse breaking through walls he had built over a decade. Maya's belief that lost people can be found and bad choices can be made right had pierced defenses no counseling or legal proceeding had breached. His gaze swept the courtroom, faces of people whose homes he might have violated, then finally Maya herself. Redemption. Cross leaned in, urging focus on their legal plan. Webb wasn't listening. Maya's courage had forced questions he could no longer avoid. When Cross rose to call his first witness, Webb abruptly stood. The scrape of his chair echoed like a gunshot. "Your Honor," he said, voice cracking, "I need to say something." Judge Williams, surprised, reminded him that any statement would be on record. Webb nodded. "I can't listen to that little girl talk about doing what's right while I'm still lying about what I did." Cross demanded a recess. Webb waved him off. "I've spent 11 years hiding behind lawyers and excuses. That little girl showed me what courage looks like." The judge advised him of his rights. Webb replied, "I understand my rights. I also understand my moral obligation to tell the truth, regardless of the consequences." Then the dam broke. "I did everything they're accusing me of. I broke into the Chen house on September 15th. I stole their electronics, their jewelry, their sense of safety, and more." He confessed to crimes police hadn't linked to him, burglarizing at least 30 homes in 2 years. Cross again tried to stop him. Webb refused. "Maya just showed me the truth. I won't let you stop me from doing what I should have done years ago." He recounted his descent, petty theft escalating to home invasions, no excuses, just accountability. He described the fear in victims' eyes, the sleepless nights he'd caused. "It was never just about things. Every family I hurt matters." The courtroom listened in stunned silence as Webb named victims, locations, and stolen goods, offering evidence that could solve unsolved cases. "I realized I'm the one who's lost," he said. "I want to believe I can make things right." Looking at Maya, he spoke directly. "You said bad choices can be made right.
I want to try, starting now. He offered to give police names of buyers, locations of stolen property, and testify against associates. He wanted to pay restitution, working if necessary to repay victims. I'm not asking for reduced consequences. I'm asking for the chance to prove Maya was right. Dr. Chen, Maya's mother, felt an unexpected recognition. Perhaps authentic change was possible. At that moment, Rocky stirred. The aging German shepherd, sensing the shift, rose and walked toward Webb. Officer Martinez moved to intervene, but Judge Williams signaled to wait. Rocky approached calmly and sat beside the man he had helped capture. The symbolism was unmistakable. A police dog who had spent his life catching criminals, now offering quiet companionship to one who had confessed. Webb looked down at Rocky with gratitude, reaching to touch his graying head. "Thank you, Rocky," he whispered. The image, a repentant man beside the dog who had brought him to justice, captured the possibility of reconciliation between lawbreaker and law. And transformation, begun with Maya's testimony, felt complete with Rocky's acceptance. The courtroom understood they were witnessing more than a confession. It was proof that even the most damaged lives could be redeemed through truth, courage, and the willingness to make amends. Judge Patricia Williams called for a 30-minute recess with her usual authority, though her voice held a trace of wonder at what had just unfolded. Marcus Webb's unexpected confession and Rocky's quiet, forgiving presence beside him had transformed the courtroom into something far beyond legal procedure. "I need time to consider the legal implications of Mr. Webb's confession," Judge Williams announced, her composure slightly shaken. The hallway filled with a low hum of conversation. Prosecutor Amanda Stevens huddled with her team. Defense attorney Michael Cross sat alone, recalculating his role. And Dr. Lisa Chen checked on her daughter. "I feel good, Mom," Maya said seriously. "Rocky looks happier now that Mr. Webb told the truth. Sometimes telling the truth is hard, but it makes things better." When court reconvened, Judge Williams addressed the room with unusual warmth. "In 30 years on the bench, I have rarely witnessed such moral courage, from our youngest witness and from our defendant." She praised Maya's commitment and turned to Webb. "I accept your guilty plea," she said. "You'll serve 18 months in county jail, followed by 5 years probation, full restitution, and 2,000 hours of community service, working with at-risk youth. Your transformation can help others avoid your mistakes." The sentence balanced justice with redemption. Officer Rocky's final case reminds us that the true measure of justice isn't the severity of punishment, but the change it inspires. Outside, Police Chief Robert Martinez addressed the gathering crowd. "What we've seen today reflects our community's best values. We'll honor Rocky with a memorial garden and launch a youth mentorship program. Maya Chen will be our first junior ambassador." Local business owner Tom Bradley pledged funding on the spot, prompting a wave of donations. Even 89-year-old Mrs. Patterson volunteered, recalling how Rocky had caught the man who stole her purse. News crews shifted from covering a police dog's retirement to documenting a community movement. Parents discussed enrolling their children in the new program. 5-year-old Emma Johnson tugged at her mother's sleeve. "Can I be in the program with Maya?" Reporters clustered around Maya, but she stayed grounded. "I don't want to be famous," she told Channel 7. Attention was too much. Maya reassured her. It's scary, but I think they just want to help me keep my promise to Rocky. By afternoon, the police department had fielded over 50 calls from parents wanting youth service opportunities. Children came to Maya with their own dreams, David Henderson wanting to find lost people like Rocky had found his grandfather. If lots of kids help, Maya told him, families won't have to be scared. Officer Sarah Martinez observed, "She's not just planning to serve, she's inspiring a generation." As the crowd thinned, Maya's brother Tommy said, "I'm proud my getting lost helped you figure out your life." Maya smiled. "Getting lost isn't the end. Rocky taught me you can be found, and sometimes that's how you discover what matters." Clutching her toy police badge, Maya left the courthouse, knowing her promise to Rocky had already grown into something larger. A shared commitment, carried by an entire community, to serve, protect, and never give up on those in need. 1 month after the extraordinary courtroom proceedings that had turned a criminal trial into a celebration of service and redemption, the city gathered at the Metropolitan Police Station for Rocky's official retirement. The October afternoon was crisp, sunlight spilling through golden oak leaves onto a yard transformed into a festival ground. Families, officials, and media filled the space, banners showing Rocky's career highlights hanging between light poles. Food trucks, children's face painting, and a small stage created a festive air, but reverence lay beneath it all. On stage, Police Chief Robert Martinez stood in full dress uniform beside Rocky, the aging German shepherd lying on a cushioned platform to ease his stiff joints. His eyes were still bright, his ceremonial collar gleaming in the sun. In the front row sat Maya Chen, 7 years old, in the same navy dress she had worn to court, her toy police badge pinned over her heart. Over the past month, she had thrown herself into planning sessions for the new youth leadership program, visited the canine training facilities, and prepared for the mentorship promised to her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chief Martinez began, "we gather today to honor an officer whose service has been exemplary in every sense. Rocky's 12 years have saved lives, solved crimes, and inspired all of us." The audience listened in silence, many remembering personal moments touched by Rocky's work. Then the chief announced the creation of the Rocky Memorial Scholarship Fund for young people committed to public service. Tail wagged gently as she approached, the connection between them plain for all to see. Kneeling to her height, Chief Martinez handed Maya a certificate. "This is our way of supporting your dream and ensuring Rocky's legacy continues through your dedication." Maya accepted it, but her eyes stayed on Rocky, understanding the moment was about responsibility, not just achievement. The ceremony's most emotional point came when Officer Sarah Martinez stepped forward for the retirement ritual. The crowd fell silent. "Throughout history," she began, "police officers have worn badges that symbolize their duty. Today we honor an officer who has served with equal dedication, though he has 4 legs instead of 2. Rocky rose to perfect attention, eyes fixed on Sarah. "For 12 years, you have worn your badge with honor," she said. "You've responded to every call, pursued every suspect, searched for every missing person, and protected every citizen. She unfastened his working badge, the soft click echoing in the stillness, then replaced it with a larger brass shield engraved Hero Emeritus. Your retirement is not an ending. It's a celebration of service and the beginning of well-deserved rest. At that moment, Maya stepped forward, kneeling beside Rocky. In her hands was a small cardboard badge wrapped in silver foil, with Rocky's Helper printed in her careful handwriting. "This is for you to keep," she said softly. "So you remember your work isn't over. It's just changing. Now you'll help teach me how to catch bad guys when I'm old enough." She pinned it next to his official badge. Rocky wagged his tail and nuzzled her hand, a gesture of approval. The crowd watched in silence as the retiring hero and the child who would carry on his legacy shared a moment that transcended words. A photographer captured the instant. Maya in her navy dress, Rocky's 2 badges catching the sunlight. The image would become iconic, symbolizing continuity of service and inspiration for future generations. As the ceremony ended, Rocky prepared to leave for his retirement at Sarah's home. A special harness supported his joints as he stepped toward the waiting police car. Suddenly, Maya ran to him. "I'm starting my training tomorrow," she said breathlessly. "Officer Martinez is going to teach me about police work, and I'm going to learn about dogs, tracking, and helping families when they're scared. I'll study every day and practice being brave like you. I'll read about law." Throughout his career, no judgment, no demands, just quiet acceptance and comfort for someone who needed reassurance. His presence seemed to communicate confidence in Maya's ability to fulfill her commitment and carry forward the values he had embodied throughout his service. As Maya finally stepped back and Rocky resumed his slow progress toward the police car, photographer Michael Stevens from the Daily Herald captured what would become the most iconic image of the entire ceremony. The photograph showed Rocky and Maya in profile, the aging German shepherd looking back over his shoulder at the 7-year-old who stood watching his departure with obvious determination and resolve. The composition was perfect in its symbolism. The old hero passing into retirement while the young hero prepared to begin her journey toward service. Maya's toy police badge caught the afternoon sunlight and created a small but noticeable sparkle in the photograph, while Rocky's retirement badge gleamed with the dignity of 12 years of faithful service. The photograph would appear in newspapers across the country the following morning with a headline, "Legacy of Service. When one hero retires, another begins." The image would be shared thousands of times on social media, inspiring similar programs in other communities and encouraging other young people to consider careers in public service. As Rocky's police car pulled away from the station and disappeared around the corner, Maya remained standing on the courthouse steps, her small figure somehow seeming larger, as the weight of her commitment and the community's faith in her potential settled on her shoulders. The afternoon sunlight continued to catch her toy police badge, creating tiny sparkles that seemed to symbolize the bright future of law enforcement shining in her determined eyes. Tommy Chen approached his sister as the crowd began to disperse, his 10-year-old face serious with newfound respect for Maya's dedication. "Maya," he said quietly, "I'm proud that my getting lost helped you figure out what you want to do with your life. and I'm proud that you're going to make sure other families don't have to go through what we did." Maya's response to her brother's support demonstrated the family bonds that had sustained her through this extraordinary experience and would continue to support her throughout the years of preparation that lay ahead. "Tommy, Rocky taught me that sometimes getting lost is how you discover what's really important. Your rescue showed me that there are people in the world who never give up on others, and that's the kind of person I want to be." Dr. Chen joined her children as the crowd continued to thin, her own eyes reflecting pride, concern, and amazement at the journey that had brought them to this moment. A month ago, she had brought Maya to court. She never could have imagined that the simple decision to attend Rocky's final testimony would result in Maya discovering her life's calling, inspiring community-wide programs to support young people interested in public service, and becoming the first recipient of a scholarship program designed to nurture the next generation of law enforcement professionals. "Maya," Dr. Chen said, kneeling to her daughter's height as the family prepared to leave the police station, "are you ready for tomorrow? Starting your training is going to be a big commitment, and it will require a lot of hard work." Maya looked up at her mother with eyes that reflected both childlike trust and mature determination. "I'm ready, Mom. Rocky showed me what it looks like to never give up when people need help. And Officer Martinez is going to teach me what I need to know. I'm not scared of hard work. I'm excited about learning how to help families like ours." As the Chen family walked toward their car, Maya turned back once more to look at the police station where Rocky had worked for 12 years and where she would begin her own preparation for law enforcement the following day. The building seemed different now, not just a government facility, but a place where heroes were trained, and where the values of service, dedication, and never giving up on others were passed from one generation to the next. Maya's promise to Rocky had been fulfilled in its first phase. She had kept her commitment to begin the long journey toward becoming a police officer who could carry forward his legacy. But as she climbed into the family car and fastened her seatbelt, Maya understood that this was just the beginning of a journey that would define her entire life and potentially touch countless other lives in ways she was only beginning to imagine. The retirement ceremony had ended, but Rocky's legacy was just beginning its transformation from the direct service of one extraordinary police dog to the inspirational influence that would shape an entire generation of young people committed to protecting and serving their communities with the same dedication, courage, and refusal to give up that had characterized his distinguished career. Rocky's story reminds us why German Shepherds hold such a special place in our hearts. Their unwavering loyalty, intelligence, and gentle strength create bonds that transcend the ordinary relationship between human and animal. These magnificent dogs don't just live alongside us. They become part of our families, our protectors, our most trusted companions. Maya's promise to Rocky shows us something beautiful, how the love between a child and a dog can inspire a lifetime of service to others. It's that same deep connection many of us feel with our own four-legged family members, that unspoken dog you might find comfort in knowing. There are gentle ways to deepen that special bond you already share. Sometimes we just need a little guidance to better understand what our faithful companions are trying to tell us. Your dog's love deserves your very best in return.